The Clone Troopers of the Republic were the backbone of Chancellor Palpatine's military force to fight the separatists during the Clone Wars. Despite being commissioned under very suspicious circumstances by a long-dead Jedi named Sifo-Dyas, the Jedi Council felt that they had no choice but to accept these new clones and serve as their generals in the upcoming conflict. Over the years, many different types of variants of clone troopers were created to fill in different use cases, including everything from clone intelligence officers to clones who hunt their brothers who have deserted. So hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. Number 1. Regular Clone Troopers. The Clone Army of the Republic was commissioned by Jedi Master and Council member Sifo-Dyas after he foresaw a coming conflict which would ravage the galaxy. The other Jedi on the Council refused to believe his insane ramblings and as a result kicked him off of the Council. Despite this, he put an order in with the Kaminoans who were known for their high quality cloning, and thus the Clone Army was born. Although there was a huge problem. While placing this order, Palpatine found out about the deal and ordered the Kaminoans to implant inhibitor chips into each of their heads, compelling them to follow any of the 150 Clone Contigency orders when activated. These clone troopers were trained on Kamino using simulations and flash training, and after passing the Citadel training course, they were well on their way to joining the front lines of the war. Number 2. Special Operations Troopers. Special Ops Troopers or Stealth Ops clones were a group of clones that specialized in low-profile, undetected stealth missions deep into enemy territory. They were trained to be able to move quickly and quietly and detect enemies at a distance without much trouble. They were also given advanced sensory gear by the Kaminoans which enhanced their senses, including their hearing and sight. They often operated experimental Republic technologies like the stealth corvette in their campaign against General Grievous and the Malevolence. Number 3. Clone Shadow Troopers. Clone Shadow Troopers were a highly secretive unit of clones who were equipped with an extremely experimental and rare type of armor. The armor was coated in deep black paint with white stripes and a red visor, and contained a group of strategically placed mag seals. These seals allowed the clones to attach cosmetic plates to the armor which could alter any clone's appearance to impersonate almost any type of human-shaped species or profession. For example, these clones could impersonate a Hutt cartel mercenary or a member of the Black Sun crime syndicate if they needed to go undercover within those crime families. This unit eventually evolved into Imperial Shadow Troopers later on. Number 4. Clone Lava Troopers. Now these guys aren't confirmed to be clone troopers in canon, but based on the time they served, it's pretty likely that at least some of them were clones. Now they wore deep black armor with thick red breathing tubes, allowing them to serve near the sulfur-rich lava rivers of Mustafar under Darth Vader. The sulfur that was coming off of those rivers was extremely toxic, so the tubes were necessary. They followed Vader loyally into battle on Mustafar, especially against the native Mustafarians who often caused trouble and rebellion near his castle. Number 5. Covert Operations Troopers. Now these clones are the most dark and ominous variant on the list. Covert Ops Troopers were assigned to perform the dirty work of the Republic, which most clones would find repulsive, unethical, or just plain wrong. This primarily included hunting down clone deserters like Cutler Quain and executing them on the spot if found. Clones who showed dark tendencies from a young age were pulled from their regular classes to join this unit on Kamino, and they were so off the grid that they weren't even part of the regular chain of command. Their work was given directly by the Supreme Chancellor or the Director of the Special Forces. Number 6. Clone Medics. Clone medics were troopers specifically bred and trained on Kamino to be able to treat their injured brothers on the battlefield. Because knowledge of the clone body was implanted into the medics' brains from before their birth, through special programming of the embryo, their treatment was extremely effective in even the worst of situations. The most famous clone medic is Clone Trooper Kix, and he is actually the last surviving clone trooper in the galaxy, making it all the way to the time of The Force Awakens. During the dying days of the Clone Wars, Kix became extremely suspicious of the so-called virus that caused his brother Tup to kill Master Tip La. After doing his own investigation into the matter, he found that Fives had eventually discovered the truth and that every clone trooper in the Republic had an inhibitor chip in their head. These investigations didn't go unnoticed though, and soon after, Count Dooku kidnapped Kix and ordered that he be brought back to his homeworld of Sereno for questioning. To do this, Dooku froze Kix in cryostasis aboard a transport ship, but on the way to Sereno it was ambushed by Republic forces who didn't know that Kix was on board, causing significant damage. As a result, the B-1 battle droid who was in charge of the ship decided that it was far too damaged to go to Sereno, so he activated the hyperdrives and sent the ship hurling in a random direction, eventually crash landing on the sandy world of Ponema. 50 years after the Clone Wars, Kix was discovered by the Red Pirate Sidon Ithano and was horrified to learn that everyone he knew was now dead. Number 7. Clone Purge Troopers. Clone Purge Troopers were a group of elite clones who were considered expendable death squads by the Empire, meant to hunt down any surviving Jedi from Order 66. The units usually served under an Inquisitor as their commander, and because they were clones and the Inquisitors were former Jedi, this led to some pretty crazy scenarios. One Jedi survivor who was hiding out on the planet Mon Cala managed to use a mind trick to force the clone Purge Troopers into executing Order 66 for a second time, but on the Inquisitors. This allowed the survivor to escape, but he was later tracked down by Darth Vader. Number 8. Clone Paratroopers. Clone Paratroopers were a unit specifically trained for airborne operations and were given specialized helmets to aid in their high altitude drops onto the battlefield. Now, these troopers usually wouldn't be too noteworthy, but after their attack on Utapau and the call for Order 66, these guys went absolutely berserk and committed the most horrendous war crimes of the war on the Utapauan people. The paratroopers tortured, murdered, and even enslaved the people on the planet in an event that was later known as the subjugation of Utapau. Number 9. Clone Gunners. These guys were pretty much just standard clones, except they were trained to man vehicle-mounted weapons or artillery, and sometimes wore specialized armor to assist in their duty of manning the guns. Number 10. Clone Jetpack Troopers. Again, these guys don't need much explanation, as they were trained to use jetpacks on the battlefield and were called in when aerial support was needed or a location was hard to access. Eventually, after Order 66, they were phased out by the Empire in favor of Imperial Jump Troopers. Number 11. Clone Scuba Troopers. Clone Scuba Troopers were deployed whenever the Republic was forced to fight battles on water worlds such as Mon Cala. The troopers were outfitted with specialized clone dive armor, which was extremely lightweight and contained a rebreather system to recycle the oxygen needed to breathe. After the fall of the Republic, sets of this armor were found on the black market, going for a measly 4,500 credits. Number 12. Clone Flame Troopers. Clone Flame Troopers were extremely effective on worlds with insect-like populations, as brutal as that sounds. They were employed against the Geonosians during the second battle on the planet, but there was one major problem. Their initial Mark I armor had a severe flaw in it, with the Kaminoans forgetting to include respirator filtration in the mask, causing many flame troopers to die while firing their weapons in confined spaces. Thankfully, this problem was soon fixed and all of the flame troopers switched to Mark II hotspot armor, which was a lot better. After Order 66, this unit evolved into the Imperial Incinerator Troopers. Number 13. Clone Ordnance Specialists, or the Clone Bomb Squad. Now, just like their brothers over in the Flame Trooper units, the clones in the Bomb Squad had a huge and fatal flaw in their armor. Or should I say, lack of armor. Most Clone Ordnance Specialists were forced to wear simple Phase 1 clone armor with only a thin layer of orange paint as protection. Yeah, as you can guess, the survival rate of this group was pretty low. Number 14. Clone Sharpshooters. In canon, these troopers are only seen in Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the Force Arena games. We know from those games that they are extremely proficient snipers and were given intensive long-distance arms training on Kamino. Unfortunately, they were very vulnerable at close range. Number 15. Clone Scout Troopers. This group of troopers were highly trained elite soldiers who primarily focused on reconnaissance and warfare on difficult terrains. They were usually sent out before large troop movements to survey the battlefield, making sure it was safe to move in. Awesomely, Scout Troopers were trained in hardcore survival skills and could survive for weeks alone in a dark and swampy wilderness. After Order 66, this unit was transitioned into the Imperial Scout Troopers that were extremely common. Number 16. Cold Assault Troopers. As the name suggests, these guys specialized on cold and snowy planets and were outfitted with HT-77 cold assault armor, which had insulated thermal seals, an internal temperature regulator, and sensory assistance in the helmets. The visors on this armor were also coated with anti-glare coating to avoid troopers having their eyes burnt out from the reflections on snow. Also, the comms unit in this armor dampened the sound of high and screeching wind. After the Empire formed, this unit transitioned into the cold weather assault stormtroopers, the same ones seen on Hoth. Number 17. The Galactic Marines. Sadly, there isn't too much information about the Galactic Marines in canon compared to Legends, but we do know that they were led by General Ki-Adi-Mundi and were intensively trained to operate in hostile environments like the fungal clouds of Felucia or the pure vacuums of space. Their unique armor also had a helmet which filtered out pollutants from their breathing, again allowing them to operate in extreme environments. Number 18. Heavy Weapons Troopers. In canon, all we know about these guys is that they specialized in using heavy weapons and anti-vehicle technology. Number 19. Clone Pilots. Clone pilots served at almost every single battle across the galaxy and ferried troopers in on transports, as well as manning their own fighters. These guys were usually chosen to become pilots from a young age on Kamino when the Kaminoans recognized them to have good reflexes and high spatial awareness. Clone pilots even served as Imperial starfighter pilots in the early days of the Empire before being phased out. Number 20, 21, 22 and 23, Clone Navigation, Medical, Intelligence and General Officers. These guys are the ones you see standing around Republic capital ships filling the positions that can't be filled by the Jedi or other trained professionals because there simply aren't enough. The navigators assisted in calculating hyperdrive jumps and moving towards waypoints, the medical officers obviously assisted with onboard medical incidents, and the general officers just filled every other position. Number 24, Clone Flight Crew. These clones were trained to maintain Republic starfighters and walkers and assisted with takeoffs and landings. Despite being seen as lesser clones, they did serve a very important purpose. Number 15, Maintenance Clones. As far as we know, 99 is the only maintenance clone ever created, and he was put in the role simply because he was part of a bad batch. Number 26, Clone Shock Troopers or the Coruscant Guard. The Coruscant Guard shock troopers were considered the most highly respected unit of clone troopers by many, handling the protection of Chancellor Palpatine, the Republic capital world of Coruscant, and the most highly guarded prison in the core worlds. They were highly trained and elite soldiers who could best almost anyone on the battlefield. The reason they came into existence in the first place was because the Senate Guard, those guys in blue, became hugely corrupt and ineffective, so Palpatine wasn't satisfied with them anymore. Number 27, Clone Riot Troopers. This group has a bit of overlap with the Coruscant Guard as some of their members serve as riot troopers, but their basic purpose is to keep protests and violence in check. This is especially important in the lower levels of Coruscant. These troopers carried huge riot shields and were given significant training on de-escalation and crowd control techniques. Number 28, ARC Troopers. ARC Troopers were highly trained elite variants of clone troopers, each chosen from the ranks of regular clone troopers. This is very different from Legends, so if you're thinking that they were born and bred specifically to become ARC Troopers, that's Legends, and this is the canon explanation, which is pretty different. The honor to become an ARC Trooper was bestowed upon clones who showed exceptional talent or bravery on the battlefield, and some were lucky enough to be selected as cadets. These troopers were sent out on the toughest and most demanding missions, but they rarely ever failed a task. Their armor was unique, and it even served as an experimental version of Phase 2 clone armor before that was released. Number 29, BARC Troopers. BARC Troopers, or Biker Advanced Recon Commanders, were Special Forces clones who, as you can guess, rode speeder bikes into battle. They were specifically taught how to navigate difficult or dangerous terrain efficiently while providing crucial battlefield information to their commanders. As you may remember, Commander Neo from Revenge of the Sith was a BARC Trooper, and he used his bike to assassinate General Stas Ali. Number 30, Clone Commandos. These guys were elite soldiers in the Grand Army of the Republic, Special Forces who wore highly advanced Catan-class commando armor. They were deployed when things got dire in battle or if the Republic needed a small but highly effective unit of troopers to carry out a mission. The most well-known group of clone commandos is probably the Delta Squad, who have only had a very tiny appearance in current canon, as well as Scorch, who randomly showed up in the Bad Batch. Speaking of the Bad Batch, number 31, Defective Clones. Now, just like 99 the Janitor, defective clones can sometimes come out with defects that actually benefited the Republic Army. The obvious example of this is the Bad Batch, who each had problems in the cloning process when they were created, giving them unique but useful abilities. Because of how proficient the Kaminoans were at cloning with hundreds of years of experience, defective clones were very rare. Number 32, Clone Artillery Troopers. These guys fire mortars and artillery pieces. That's all we know in canon. Number 33, Clones Comms Technicians. These guys handle communications between clone legions and transmit orders from Jedi Generals. Again, that's all we know in canon. Number 34, Clone Engineers. The Clone Engineers in Legends have some pretty awesome stories, but in canon we really only know that they were thrown into battle when Republic vehicles or technology needed repairing. They were outfitted with specialized Phase 1 clone armor, usually with yellow trimming to denote that they were not ready to fight. Number 35, Clone Heavy Gunners. Clone Heavy Gunners were the ones who used heavy-duty weaponry on the battlefield and were given much stronger clone trooper armor than regular Phase 1 or 2 clone armor. They were also given a Karma and Pauldron and often served next to medics and snipers of the attacking forces. Number 36, Kamino Guard Troopers. The Kamino Guard Troopers were hand-chosen by Kaminoan scientists for their great defensive and protective instincts during training. These guys were almost the same as regular troopers, but were given highly specialized training on how to defend watery planets from attack. They also stuck around in the early days of the Empire to aid in Palpatine's plan, sadly not for long though. So that is every single clone trooper type in canon. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to know about every single lightsaber type in canon, click on the video on screen now, and I will see you in the next one.